In the vibrant and tumultuous landscape of Britain during the 1970s, a time defined by an abundance of ambition and a fervour for innovation, inventors pushed the boundaries of creativity. This decade was marked by bold dreams and inventiveness, resulting in a spectacular array of both triumphant innovations and notorious failures. Among the curiosities of the era were cars equipped with uniquely shaped steering wheels and wristwatches that had a habit of self-destructing. These inventions not only captured the imagination of the public, but also highlighted the fearless adventurous spirit of British inventors who dared to think big, sometimes to a fault. This recounts the tales of 21 British inventions from the 1970s that, despite their promising ambitions, failed dramatically in execution. Take, for instance, the ill-fated British Leyland Allegro, introduced in May 1973 as a successor to the popular Austin 1100. However, from the outset, the Allegro seemed destined for failure. The automotive press was unimpressed, quickly rebranding its name to All Agro in a play on words that reflected the general discontent surrounding the vehicle. The Allegro's designers touted its modern aesthetics, featuring a rounded, bulbous exterior that was far from universally appealing. To critics and prospective buyers alike, the car looked as though it had been inadvertently flattened. But perhaps the most perplexing feature was its steering wheel. The Quartic steering wheel, neither fully circular nor truly square, offered what British Leyland claimed to be revolutionary benefits such as enhanced legroom and an improved view of the dashboard instruments. However, motor enthusiasts and potential owners found it awkward and unfamiliar, leading to widespread aversion. Within a year, the unpopular Quartic wheel was quietly replaced with a traditional round steering wheel, but the damage to the Allegro's reputation was irreversible. Mechanically, the Allegro suffered from severe quality control issues. Attempting something as simple as a tire change could inadvertently trap passengers inside, as lifting the car risked jamming the doors. The pressure might also cause the windscreen to detach. The build quality was abysmal. Components routinely fell off, fluids leaked, and crucial systems failed unexpectedly. Thus, the Allegro became synonymous with disappointment and unreliability before most had even seen it on the road. Meanwhile, in January 1976, the aviation industry witnessed the inaugural service of the world's first supersonic passenger jet, Concorde. Capable of soaring from London to New York in under 3 hours at twice the speed of sound, Concorde was a marvel of engineering yet proved to be a financial black hole. Initially projected to cost £150 million when the Anglo-French Treaty was signed in 1962, the spiralling expenses soared to a staggering £1.3 billion by the project's completion. Some economic analysts speculated that the true financial impact was thrice as much. Despite its breathtaking speed and technological advancements, Concorde had its drawbacks, specifically its thunderous noise. The jet was so loud during takeoff that schools near Heathrow had to halt classes, and church services paused because nobody could hear the vicar. Upon reaching supersonic speeds, Concorde's sonic booms had the potential to shatter windows and damage surrounding structures, prompting the United States and several European countries to prohibit its flights over populated areas. Moreover, its fuel consumption was prodigious. It guzzled aviation fuel at the rate akin to a Boeing 747 but accommodated only a quarter of the passengers. With colossal operating costs, ticket prices skyrocketed, limiting its passenger base to the rich elite, a market too small to sustain profitability. Ultimately, only 14 out of 20 constructed Concordes saw service, and by the start of the new millennium, the fleet was retired, a testament to the challenges of merging engineering prowess with economic viability. September 1975 marked yet another audacious yet ill-fated endeavour with Sir Clive Sinclair's launch of Britain's first affordable digital timepiece, the Black Watch. This attempt marked a significant step in making cutting-edge technology accessible to the masses, yet the initiative faced unforeseen hurdles. Priced at £24.95 for a fully assembled watch or £17.95 for a DIY kit, these figures translate to approximately £230 and £160 in today's currency, which is certainly not an insignificant expense. At the time, the digital watch market was booming with the promise of cutting-edge technology, and everyone believed it represented the wave of the future. Sinclair, a company eager to ride this wave, decided to enter the scene. They launched the Black Watch with an eye-catching design that exuded a sense of the futuristic era, featuring a sleek black plastic case complemented by a striking red LED display. Intriguingly, the watch had no traditional buttons. Instead, you interacted with touch-sensitive panels to check the time, enhancing its space-age appeal. However, what seemed destined for success turned out to be plagued with problems from the very start. The watch's battery, which consumers expected to last a year, often depleted within weeks, sometimes even days, leaving users frustrated. When it came time to replace the battery, users faced the daunting task of having to dismantle the entire device. Another issue with the Black Watch was its temperature-sensitive display. During the heat of summer, it accelerated time, while in cold winter months, it lagged, causing the watch to gain or lose minutes according to the weather, a source of endless inconvenience. The watch was also remarkably susceptible to static electricity. Something as simple as walking across a carpet in a nylon shirt could generate enough static charge to render the watch completely inoperative. Furthermore, the components inside the watch were incredibly fragile. A slight drop could cause it to shatter, and some models even disintegrated spontaneously while being worn. And then there were the kits. For those adventurous enough to attempt assembling their own watches, the process was infuriatingly complex. It involved meticulous and delicate soldering of tiny components, a task that tested both the patience and technical skills of even the most experienced hobbyists. The installation process for the batteries was so clumsy and awkward that it required unusual tools like wooden clothes pegs and drawing pins just to fit the batteries into place. Many individuals lost patience and gave up halfway through, unable to navigate the convoluted assembly. Those few who did persevere and managed to complete the installation were met with disappointment. Their watches were non-functional from the outset. The scale of dissatisfaction was immense, with returns flooding back to Sinclair Radionics in the thousands. In fact, they received more watches returned than had actually been sold, creating a backlog that stretched on for a staggering 2 years. A dedicated team of 20 staff members was overwhelmed, trying in vain to repair tens of thousands of these defective watches. The company faced financial ruin, teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, and it was only the intervention of a government bailout that kept Sinclair Radionics afloat. The culinary landscape of Britain in the 1970s was not known for its diversity or adventurousness. The typical family diet consisted of straightforward meals like meat and 2 veg, the traditional Sunday roast, and fish on Friday. Curries were perceived as an exotic and strange novelty. Enter Vesta, a company determined to revolutionize British cuisine by introducing instant curry meals that promise convenience. Just add boiling water, wait 5 minutes, and voila, dinner is served. However, the reality was far from appetizing. The meat in these meals resembled gravel, small, brown, and hard chunks that might once have been chicken or beef, though it was hard to tell. The sauce, a bright yellow powder, stubbornly clumped together, perpetually lumpy and gritty. The crispy noodles were a disaster. Deep-fried until they were rock-hard, they tasted like cardboard that had taken a dip in a fryer. Vesta curries failed to capture the rich flavors of authentic curry. Instead, they were a culinary letdown. Yet, despite the unappealing taste, people bought them, driven by the need for convenience and perhaps because many Brits in the 70s had never experienced the true taste of curry. The 1970s dinner party in Britain was incomplete without a peculiar appliance, the hostess trolley, a heated cupboard on wheels designed to keep food warm while serving multiple courses. However, it failed at its primary function, maintaining food at temperatures perfect for bacterial growth rather than safe consumption. Instead of preserving the dish freshness, it allowed food to languish. The roast beef would become tough and leathery, the vegetables reduced to a grey mush, and the gravy congealing into an unappetizingly thick skin capable of supporting a standing spoon. But despite its failings, owning a hostess trolley was a status symbol. It signified middle-class standing and the social prestige of hosting dinner parties, even if it meant their guests might spend the following day recovering from food-induced ailments. The original stylophone was a quaint toy, a simple synthesizer that produced strange buzzing sounds when played with a pen. Popularized by Rolf Harris, it captured children's attention but only briefly, holding their interest for about 10 minutes. Sinclair saw an opportunity to evolve the toy into a serious musical instrument with the Stylophone 350s, boasting a larger design and an array of additional features, including photosensor controls for producing wah-wah effects. This was envisioned as a bona fide electronic instrument. However, reality fell short of ambition. The 350s was merely a plastic box that emitted ear-piercing screeches. The photosensor was nearly impossible to control, responding to movements with random and erratic noises rather than melodic tunes. It produced unbearable, high-pitched sounds that had parents reaching for the paracetamol to quell their ensuing headaches. Britain, the nation that pioneered the railway, faced a challenge in the 1970s: to demonstrate once again its prowess in railway innovation. This was embodied by the Advanced Passenger Train, APT, intended to be Britain's cutting-edge response to Japan's bullet train. The APT was designed to operate at high speeds with a tilting mechanism that allowed for speeds of up to 155 miles per hour on standard railway tracks. There's no need for an expensive new railway infrastructure, which seemed like a stroke of genius at first. The intention behind the tilting mechanism was to ensure that passengers would remain comfortable even as the train navigated curves at high speeds. The innovative approach was supposed to revolutionize rail travel, offering a smooth ride even when the train was hurtling around bends. However, the reality turned out to be far less glamorous. Instead of enhancing comfort, the tilting mechanism caused severe motion sickness among passengers. The inaugural press run in 1981 turned into an unmitigated catastrophe. As the train came to a stop, journalists stumbled out with faces tinged green, their expressions a mix of dizziness and nausea. Some were unable to keep their composure and ended up vomiting. The media quickly seized on the chaos, turning it into a sensational story. Newspapers ran headlines that lampooned Britain's so-called supertrain, which was now notorious for making its passengers ill. Illustrators had a field day, publishing cartoons depicting beleaguered travellers clutching sick bags. The project, into which millions of pounds and years of research had been poured, could never regain its footing. Despite the initial promise, it was ultimately abandoned. The irony is that the technology itself proved effective eventually. Many other countries adopted the tilting mechanism, refining it into a successful application for their rail systems. While Britain's venture languished in failure, its reputation irreparably tarnished. In another domain of innovation, there's the concept of a teasmade, an intriguing invention designed to make mornings more pleasant. It's essentially an alarm clock that also functions as a tea maker, promising to deliver a freshly brewed cup of tea right by your bedside at a preset time. The idea behind it seems perfect on paper, catering to the quintessentially British love of tea. However, the execution left much to be desired. Rather than gently waking you with the soft aroma of brewing tea, the machine was notorious for its startlingly loud operations. First came an ear-splitting hiss of steam, akin to a miniature locomotive firing up. This was followed by the unsettling sound of water bubbling furiously. The whole process was anything but soothing, and users would be jolted awake in a state of alarm rather than calmness. Let's delve deeper into the chaotic scenario that unfolded from the moment you woke up in sheer panic, convinced that your house was engulfed in flames. You were immediately struck by the oppressive humidity pervading your bedroom. This wasn't your average case of morning condensation. It was a full-blown disaster zone. Imagine waking up to find that the supposedly simple task of keeping a cup of steaming water by your bedside had transformed your room into an unintended sauna. Clouds of moisture hovered in the air, clinging to every surface. The once sturdy wallpaper was now peeling helplessly from the walls, defeated by the excessive dampness. Your windows looked as if a rainstorm had settled on the inside, droplets cascading relentlessly down the glass. You hoped for a comforting sip of tea, but it was merely lukewarm, often frustratingly cold by the time it reached your lips. Instead of the revitalizing morning brew you dreamed of, you got a beverage with a bizarre metallic tang from the heating element. Hardly the experience outlined in the quaint advertisements. Still, it was a common sight in every British grandmother's home, a dusty, neglected appliance, used once and promptly forgotten. It seemed like a novel idea until practicality intervened. Speaking of quirky innovations, someone at Bond Cars in the vibrant 1970s decided to take a daring leap into the world of auto design by altering a motorcycle in the most perplexing manner. Enter the Bond Bug, a peculiar three-wheeled vehicle painted an eye-popping orange. It resembled a futuristic wedge straight out of a science fiction saga, capturing the imagination yet delivering an unnervingly real driving experience. Ingeniously designed with two wheels positioned at the front and a lone wheel in the back, it broke convention. To access this automotive oddity, you didn't merely open a door, you lifted the entire canopy skyward, akin to boarding a fighter jet. Unlike fighter jets renowned for their speed and safety, the Bond Bug offered neither. Achieving its top speed of 78 miles per hour was an adrenaline-pumping ordeal, where each acceleration felt like brushing past disaster. The vehicle's lightweight structure made it vulnerable to even modest gusts of wind, veering unpredictably across roads. Navigating corners at excessive speeds spelled disaster. Flipping and overturning were real risks. Then there was the rain, a naturally formidable adversary. The canopy, unfortunately, was not leak-proof, and the heater was woefully inept, leaving you shivering in a damp, chilly, orange capsule. The initial excitement quickly dissipated as reality set in. Despite the allure of innovation, only 2,268 Bond Bugs appeared on the market. Most owners rapidly regretted their choice. However, today these awkward vehicles have evolved into treasured collector's items, more for their comically terrible qualities than any inherent merit. Transitioning from automobiles to beverages that defined an era, enter Cresta, a drink that promised fizziness but delivered foam and mischievous surprise. The catchphrase, "It's frothy, man," was exuberantly declared by a cartoon polar bear, ignorant of the brewing dental concerns. Cresta wasn't truly fizzy. It gave you a glass filled with what resembled someone infusing regular soda with endless air. The vivid colors were mesmerizing, blindingly bright pink strawberry and a shockingly radiant orange. Yet, regardless of their eye-catching appearance, the flavors blended into an indistinct overly sweet medley. It was as if sugar commandeered the taste buds, leaving a lingering synthetic essence. Only the brave dared a second bottle, for children adored it momentarily until a sugar-induced frenzy took over. It didn't take long before parents learned to avoid this chaos-inducing drink entirely. By the late 70s, Cresta vanished, unlamented by the public. In pursuit of breakfast innovation, Britain's response to the American tang was Rise and Shine, designed to space-age your morning routine. Yet, despite the allure, it perpetually failed to dissolve entirely, no matter the vigorous stirring involved. A gritty deposit always persisted at the bottom, creating a sandy, unpleasant reminiscence rather than refreshing orange juice. Finally, dessert, pivotal in 1970s Sunday luncheons, offered its own headline act, a pudding revolution led by Bird's Instant Whip. Homemade trifles required time many couldn't spare. Instead, convenience dictated a simple solution. Just add milk, give a quick whisk, and voila, an immediate dessert. Only the final creation wasn't mousse at all but airy, chemical-flavored froth that paralleled the consistency of shaving cream. Sweet yet oddly devoid of any real flavor, this dessert was available in supposedly tantalizing varieties like strawberry, chocolate, and butterscotch. In reality, each one bore a striking resemblance to artificial vanilla, with only a faint suggestion of the color they claimed to embody. They were always elegantly presented in your grandmother's finest glass bowls, topped off with a glossy cherry that habitually remained untouched by everyone. This treat, known as Instant Whip, became synonymous with weary mothers who had foregone culinary ambition or households adhering to a strict dinner schedule at precisely 6:30 p.m., regardless of anyone's taste preferences. It accompanied Sunday afternoons steeped in the aroma of roast beef, underscored by a sense of anticlimax. As for beverages, the era heralded the promise of homemade fizzy drinks with the introduction of SodaStream, a novelty that offered the ability to infuse plain water with carbonation at your own convenience. However, these machines from the 1970s carried an imposing presence. They were hefty, cumbersome contraptions that required careful handling. The included glass bottles were notorious for being fragile. The threat of them bursting under excessive pressure was ever present, a common occurrence as many neglected the guidance provided in the instructions. The flavored syrups, intended to transform your carbonated concoction into classics like cola and lemonade, fell short, often reminding one of medicinal concoctions. The so-called cola didn't quite emulate its true counterpart, and the lemonade similarly strayed far from its authentic taste, offering a vaguely fruity hint that was far removed from any real fruit essence. Your homemade pop had a distinctly familiar taste, reminiscent of budget-friendly supermarket brands. The reason? It was practically the same thing, albeit with one intriguing twist. You could add a delightful effervescence to it. This sparkling feature was the key selling point. The less-than-pleasant taste was irrelevant. It fizzled, and that held a certain magic. In the 1970s Britain, that was more than enough to draw eager consumers. Enter the realm of home cleaning innovation with the Goblin Aquarius, a wet and dry vacuum cleaner that promised to revolutionize household chores. However, upon its launch, reality proved to be far less enchanting than the marketing promised. The machine itself was colossal, a mammoth device that threatened to inflict a hernia with its weight. The mere task of hauling it up a flight of stairs was so taxing that one was left thoroughly spent before any actual cleaning could commence. The result? An aching back, weary arms, and sheer frustration. Even more disappointing was its actual performance. Its so-called wet function left carpets drenched rather than refreshed, while the dry function was mediocre at best, no more effective than a standard Hoover. Despite its inflated price tag, which was double that of conventional models, and its cumbersome nature, the device failed to deliver utility. Disillusioned, many owners consigned the Goblin Aquarius to the forgotten realm beneath the staircase, gathering dust, ironically, the very substance it was designed to eliminate. Disenchanted families quickly returned to their trustworthy, albeit less revolutionary, old Hoovers. Meanwhile, Sunday dinner was a cherished ritual, the highlight of the week, particularly exemplified in the ceremonial act of Dad carving the roast. Yet traditional knives felt antiquated, painfully slow for the impatient cook. Enter the electric carving knife, a contraption designed to modernize this age-old task. Sporting two blades vibrating at high speed, it boasted the efficiency of a buzzsaw. Meat was no longer an obstacle, yielding with unsettling ease. The downside? Any hope of beautifully carved thin slices vanished, as controlling this aggressive tool proved nigh on impossible. Instead of delicately separated cuts, you ended up with shredded beef, turkey disintegrating into piles, and pork resembling confetti by the end of the ordeal. And then there was the deafening noise, a relentless, high-pitched that drowned out family conversation and had the household pets scurrying for cover. Permanent press trousers stood as another emblem of modern dreams. A pristine crease lasting all day was what the Pifco trouser press promised. The instructions were simple: hang the trousers, shut the press, and leave them overnight for a picture-perfect finish. In practice, the results were far less reliable. The heat distribution was erratic at best, leaving one trouser leg perfectly pressed while the other appeared neglected. Occasionally, it stamped a misplaced crease, embarrassing enough to suggest you were fashionably off-kilter with a seam down the side rather than the front. Worse still, it left unsightly marks, a glaze of shininess born from excessive heat, even burn marks marring delicate textiles. Yet, nearly every dad owned one, proudly mounted in the bedroom, seldom used and gathering dust by the day. Invariably, families reverted to the forgivable practicality of an iron, which at least provided consistent service. In 1977, Sinclair boldly introduced the Microvision, followed by the TV-80, a tantalizing glimpse into portable technology with the world's first pocket television. This was heralded as the future of entertainment, condensed into a compact form featuring a mere 2-inch screen. To catch any glimpse of its wonders, users squinted intensely, struggling with a grainy black and white picture. The reception was notoriously fickle, working best only if you stood precariously close to a transmitter, perfectly aligning the aerial, a delicate balance disrupted by the slightest shift. Its battery life was laughably short, barely eking out minutes. Morning light rendered the display nearly invisible, and overheating was a constant companion if tucked away in one's pocket. The cost was a staggering £99.95, equating to over £600 in today's currency for a barely functional television. Yet, despite all its shortcomings, 15,000 units found their way into the hands of eager enthusiasts. Most were eventually consigned to drawers once the novelty faded, trotted out occasionally as a party trick. "Look at my pocket TV," someone might boast, to be met with the inevitable query, "Can you actually watch it?" The sheepish response followed, "Not really." Nylon sheets were touted as the wave of the future in bedding, promising a revolution in home comfort due to their non-iron, colorful, and low-maintenance qualities. The allure was almost irresistible. Imagine bedding that never needed ironing and came in a dazzling array of vibrant colors. But the reality of nylon bed linens was far from the dream. The major flaw? Breathability, or the stark lack thereof. Nylon, sadly, is not a fabric that allows airflow. What did this mean for those who slept under these futuristic sheets? It meant waking up night after night in a pool of perspiration, drenched and utterly uncomfortable. Sleeping under nylon felt as though you were wrapped in a suffocating bin bag, waking repeatedly throughout the night to the discomfort of clammy skin. And that was only the beginning of the nylon bedding woes. The sheets seemed to generate an unprecedented amount of static electricity. Lying down each night was akin to an electrifying spectacle, with visible blue sparks crackling in the dark as you shifted. The sensations weren't just visual. Audibly, the sheets crackled and snapped, and if you happened to brush a hand through your hair, it stubbornly stood on end, reminiscent of a lesson in static electricity from a science class. Another practical issue arose from nylon's lack of friction. Rather than staying put, the sheets would slip and slide at the slightest movement, unable to grip the mattress. By morning, in a most exasperating fashion, you would often find the sheets tangled and bunched up at the foot of the bed, leaving you lying on the cold, bare mattress. Despite the initial hype, few were willing to endure these nightly frustrations for long. Most households quickly abandoned their single experiment with nylon bedding, having purchased only one set before retreating back to the trusted comfort of cotton sheets, grateful for the lesson learned. Meanwhile, the 1970s in Britain were characterized by a fervor for concrete in urban design. Architects of the era, driven by a vision of modernity, reimagined the future of commerce as sprawling, concrete shopping centers. These massive structures, with their imposing grey angular forms, often bore an unfortunate resemblance to foreboding nuclear bunkers. This architectural trend led to a transformation across towns in Britain, as quaint Victorian streets with their charm and character were unceremoniously replaced by these stark edifices, heralding a new but controversial aesthetic in urban development. The majestic and historic buildings that once adorned our towns were unceremoniously torn down to make way for soulless concrete blocks. The likes of the notorious Treacorn Centre in Portsmouth, the sprawling Birmingham Bullring, the Merrion Centre in Leeds, and the much-criticised Gateshead car park embodied this architectural transition. These structures, imagined as icons of modernity and glimpses into a futuristic world, quickly revealed their disheartening reality. They stood stark and uninviting, casting a cold, shadowed presence over the areas they occupied. Within a mere 5 years, their concrete facades were marred by rain-induced stains and the relentless markings of pigeons. The material, once touted for its durability, displayed premature signs of aging, cracks sprawling across surfaces, water seeping through seams. They became places shunned by the public, especially as dusk settled. Over time, these buildings became symbols of urban neglect, and widespread public aversion led to their demolition within 3 decades. Anything, even the most mundane replacement, was preferable to yet another drab concrete structure. The experiment with concrete shopping centres left a lasting blemish on the landscape of Britain's town centres, a constant reminder of a misstep in architectural vision. Similarly fanciful yet ultimately disillusioning was the promise of slender tone, an electronic muscle stimulator that dominated British magazine adverts of the 1970s. The allure was undeniable. By merely attaching the pads to your abdomen and watching television from the comfort of your couch, you could achieve the coveted six-pack abs with minimal effort. This was a dream of effortless perfection. However, the reality was far less enchanting. Users endured unpleasant electric shocks, a prickling sensation that substituted for the expected effortless transformation. The device failed to deliver on its promises. The allure faded, with the gadget eventually relegated to the obscure depths of wardrobes, joining the ranks of countless other well-intentioned but ineffective shortcuts to physical fitness. The world of play witnessed its own brief and chaotic saga with the introduction of clackers, 2 hard plastic balls joined by a string. Emerging as the must-have toy of 1971, clackers were ubiquitous in playgrounds, their rhythmic clacking resounding like artillery fire as children swung them with eager competitive zest. Faster swings meant louder clacks, creating sheer auditory chaos with children joining the frenzy. Yet the frenzy was short-lived, as the brittle plastic balls started breaking under the strain of energetic use. The toy's popularity plummeted sharply as the balls shattered into dangerous fragments, posing immediate hazards by sending high-speed projectiles towards children's faces, eyes, and hands. Safety concerns rapidly became a public outcry, leading to school bans, distressed parental pleas, and eventually government intervention. Declared a safety risk, production ceased, and the clacker craze was swiftly extinguished almost as quickly as it had ignited. If any of these ill-fated ventures stir your own recollections, we invite you to leave a comment below, share your experiences, and reminisce together. Don't forget to share this story with others who might remember these curious chapters of history, and please subscribe to the channel to help us keep these memories alive.